I remember that day. I never forgot it. That a slave could take revenge against an emperor.
Hi, I'm Alexander Mariotti. I'm a historian and historical consultant. I recently worked on the highly anticipated sequel of Gladiator, Gladiator 2. And in this video, what I'd like to do is tell you about the opening games of the Colosseum, the excitement, the thrill of the fight, why we're so obsessed with it, and why maybe going to the cinema isn't that far from going to the Colosseum 2,000 years ago. The Empire of Rome was forged at the end of a sword. It is on the battlefield that generals made their names, emperors extended the reach of the empire and consolidated their power. But in Rome itself, it's not the battlefield where power was gained and popularity was won. It was the arena, where the generals and the emperors took a backseat to the true star of the show, the gladiator. I recently worked on the Gladiator 2 movie sequel, and I thought, what a perfect time to revisit one of the most important and enigmatic moments of Roman history. Between 80 and 81 AD, the citizens of Rome retreated to the opening of one of the greatest monuments in history. After 8 years of watching this gigantic construction slowly rise from the ground, the time had come for the inaugural games of the new Flavian Amphitheatre, or what we would call today, the Colosseum. The atmosphere was electric. The noise of the crowd as excited spectators made their way, tessera in hand, which were tickets, each one marked with a specific number to a corresponding arch. As they made their way up the stairs and tunnels, stepped into the grand arena, the noise of 60 to 80,000 excited people hit you like a tidal wave. Nothing this size had existed before, and nor would it be rivaled for another 1,800 years. To some, it must have been terrifying, but to most, it must have seemed like something out of a dream. And all of it created by the general who'd become the emperor, Titus. The orchestra would have kicked in, playing to the entrance of the emperor himself. Just think how exciting to share a day with the most powerful person in the entire world at that time. A person who had invited you to the opening of this grand arena and giving you free food and free tickets, free wine, and the opportunity to see one of the greatest shows ever held. You can see how intoxicating such games were for the powerful and how easy they were to use to gain that power. As the awnings flapped in the warm summer breeze above the top of the Colosseum, providing shade, the people of Rome sat in that amphitheatre, eating, drinking, laughing, cheering. Music blared as brave hunters fought ferocious exotic animals. Criminals who had wronged the system met justice, and acrobats, dancers and entertainers thrilled the crowd. Believe it or not, the most exciting part had yet to come. As the sun began to set into the late afternoon and the temperature had cooled out of the tunnels, stepped two men upon the sand, their names reverberating to triumphant music and their cheering fans. Helmets glinting, they saluted the packed crowd, and it erupted.
Let the games begin!
They were the superstars of their moment, prime athletes, champion gladiators who had the honor of fighting in the title fight that opened the Colosseum. One can only imagine the pressure they must have felt, the excitement, the adrenaline, the chance to snatch immortality. So legendary was their fight that their names have survived through the ages. As Martial, one of the greatest and most famous poets of history, described what happened in his Liber Spectacularum. As Priscus and Verus each drew out the contest, and the struggle between the pair long stood equal, shouts loud and often sought discharge for the combatants. But Titus obeyed his own law. The law was that the bout go on without shield until a finger be raised. What he could do, he did, often giving dishes and presents. But an end to the even strife was found. Equal they fought, equal they yielded. To both Titus sent wooden swords, and to both palms. Thus valor and skill had their reward. This happened under no prince but you, Titus. Two fought and both won. No doubt as you were listening to these words, you were painting an image in your head. The noise of the crowd, the heat, the sand, the atmosphere. And like myself, you wished you could have been there. On the 12th of May in the year 2000, my father and I went to see the Ridley Scott epic Gladiator. Like millions, we were hooked. But for us, having grown up knowing the Colosseum, seeing the Colosseum, it was deeply personal. Being able to see a site that is just the bare bones of that structure come to life was nothing short of incredible. There's this great wide shot of the inside of the Colosseum when Maximus is fighting Tigris of Gaul. I'm sure you remember it. Whenever I think of that shot, I think of Verus and Priscus, of the spectators watching that match that, who knows, may have included my very own ancestors. And then I think of my dad and I sitting in that cinema seat, eating and drinking, watching a gladiator fight in the Colosseum. It's one of those moments that makes you realize that there's something about these snapshots in history which have an immortal soul to them. They're themes that we're constantly obsessed with and interested in. So much so that we use our technology, our art to recreate them. This is immensely Roman of us. The Colosseum games were discreetly intricate and complicated. They were political, but they were how the emperor won power and how he won the empire in Rome. You see, between the emperor of Rome and the poorest Roman, there was a huge gap. We're talking about two people who had nothing in common, yet the games unified the nobles, the poor, the plebs, the patricians. It was the one place where people came together and shared the moment, but more importantly, where they went to leave their lives behind and for a briefest of moments, distract themselves. As I often say, history doesn't repeat itself, but people do, and we, at the end of the day, are just Romans. We love the thrill, the combat, the spectacle, the distraction. In fact, as we speak, millions are eagerly anticipating the next installment of the Ridley Scott Gladiator film. A chance to distract ourselves, to sit in the Colosseum, food and drink in hand, to travel back to a time of generals, emperors and gladiators, and for a moment to relive these immortal snapshots so echoed in history.